I decided to contribute to a classic debate among sci-fi fans. Which civilization is more advanced? Star Trek or Star Wars? It is not about which franchise is better. I so not compare just the Empire with Federation, and not the ideological differences. So let us explode this question. Per aspera ad astra. However, the key to understanding this is that these civilizations are built on completely different foundations and narrative purposes. Star Wars is a space fantasy epic, while Star Trek is a speculative science fiction series. Here's a detailed breakdown comparing their technologies. While Star Wars has bigger, much faster ships and galaxy-spanning empires, its technology is largely static, applied, and not understood by its users. It's treated like everyday machinery. A Star Wars mechanic can fix a hyperdrive but likely doesn't understand the fundamental physics behind it. Star Trek's technology is dynamic, theoretical, and understood. The crew of the Enterprise are scientists and explorers. They debate the ethics of new technology, they improve it, and they fundamentally understand the science behind the warp core, transporters, and shields. Their civilization is built on a foundation of scientific discovery and application. Another aspect is in the capabilities. A Star Trek holodeck can create a perfect interactive reality out of pure force fields and holograms. A Star Trek transporter can break you down to your quantum state and put you back together perfectly thousands of kilometers away. A Star Trek warp core harnesses the power of antimatter. These technologies require a deeper, more fundamental and more advanced understanding of physics, computing, and energy than anything demonstrated in the Star Wars galaxy. Star Wars is a story of the past, a long time ago, that feels old, while Star Trek is a vision of a future built on the progression of science. Another topic are the Midi-chlorians. This gets to the very heart of the philosophical difference between the two franchises. There is nothing truly similar to Midi-chlorians in Star Trek. The entire concept is antithetical to Star Trek's core principles. In Star Trek, if something exists, the goal is to study, understand, and explain it through science. The Force, as defined by Midi-chlorians, is ultimately a spiritual concept with a biological mediator, which doesn't fit the Star Trek model. While there's no direct counterparts, some concepts in Star Trek explore similar ideas of potential and connection, but from a purely scientific angle. Genetic engineering, this is the closest parallel in terms of measuring potential. Humans like Khan Noonien Singh and other augments were genetically engineered to be smarter, faster, and stronger than normal humans. This is a measurable biological advantage, much like a high midi-chlorian count. However, it's a created advantage, not a natural spiritual one. Key difference: augmentation is a technological achievement, frowned upon for ethical reasons, leading to the eugenics wars. It creates physical and intellectual superiority, not a connection to a mystical energy field. The psionic abilities. Some species, like the betazoids, are naturally telepathic. Others, like humans, occasionally exhibit psionic potential, e.g. the crew members in the TNG episode Dark Page. This is often treated as a latent evolutionary trait that can be scanned for and measured with medical sensors. Key difference: these are specific psychic abilities rooted in a species' biology and brain structure. They are not a universal connection to a force that binds all living things together. A betazoid can read the thoughts of another humanoid, but they cannot feel the life force of a planet, or see the future through a connection to the cosmos in the way a Jedi can. The Vulcan Mind Meld. A technique for sharing thoughts and experiences. It's a skilled practice, but it's also a biological ability unique to Vulcans. Key difference: it's a conscious technique to form a temporary telepathic link between two minds. It is not a constant state of being connected to a universal energy field. The Q continuum possesses godlike powers, similar to a Jedi Master's command of the Force. However, the Q are a highly advanced, non-corporeal species existing outside of normal space-time. Their powers are a natural state of their existence, not an ability granted by a symbiotic relationship with microorganisms. Key difference: the Q are a type of being, while the Force is an energy field that certain beings can access. This is the most important reason why a concept like midi-chlorians would never exist in Star Trek. Star Wars with midi-chlorians introduces an element of genetic destiny. Your potential is largely determined at birth by a biological metric. This creates a natural aristocracy, those who are force-sensitive and those who are not. This fits the feudal chosen one narrative of Star Wars. Star Trek's core idealism. Star Trek, particularly the Federation, is built on meritocracy and human potential. While different species have different abilities, anyone can strive to become a Starfleet captain through hard work, intelligence, and dedication. Your worth is not predetermined at birth by a blood test. Introducing a concept like midi-chlorians, a biological measure of spiritual potential, would completely undermine this core tenet of Star Trek's philosophy. It would be the ultimate violation of its egalitarian ideals. Midi-chlorians are a narrative device to quantify the mystical force in Star Wars. Star Trek has no need for such a device because its universe is built on a foundation of science, reason, and the belief that potential is achieved, not predetermined. Any special abilities are explained through biology, technology, or the advanced evolution of a species, all concepts that can in theory be studied and understood by science. The absence of a midi-chlorian equivalent is a perfect example of how Star Trek and Star Wars are fundamentally different genres. One is science fiction in pursuit of rational explanation, and the other is space fantasy that embraces spiritual mystery. Let's compare both universes on the classic Kardashev scale model. The Federation's mastery of matter-antimatter annihilation is a technology far beyond a Type 1 civilization. However, while this technology could provide the energy output of a Type 2 civilization, the Federation itself is likely still considered a high Type 1 civilization on the traditional Kardashev scale because it doesn't control the energy output of an entire star. Its energy infrastructure is decentralized. The Kardashev scale is a somewhat outdated and imperfect model for measuring a civilization like the Federation. Their advancement is less about raw energy output and more about their mastery of the fundamental laws of physics, matter-energy conversion, subspace, etc. The Federation does not just use antimatter, it has the ability to manufacture it. How it's done? They use massive solar arrays or fusion power to generate immense energy. This energy is then used in facilities called antimatter generators or antimatter farms to create antimatter, most often by reconfiguring subatomic particles. This is an incredibly energy-intensive process, but it allows them to create the most potent fuel known. The energy payoff. This manufactured antimatter is then stored and used in warp cores aboard starships or in power plants on planets. When the antimatter reacts with matter in a controlled reaction mediated by dilithium crystals, it results in a 100% efficient matter-to-energy conversion as per EMC Quad. The energy yield is astronomical. The Kardashev scale and why it doesn't fit perfectly. The Kardashev scale defines civilizations based on the total energy they can harness. Type 1, planetary civilization, controls all energy on its home planet, circa 10 to the power of 16 watts. Type 2, stellar civilization, harnesses the total energy output of its star, circa 10 to the power of 26 watts. The classic example is a Dyson sphere. Type 3, galactic civilization, controls energy on the scale of its entire galaxy, circa 10 to the power of 36 watts. The problem, the Kardashev scale, conceived in 1964, imagines civilizations building ever larger structures to capture energy. It doesn't account for a civilization that uses ultra-efficient conversion rather than massive capture. A single Galaxy-class starship's warp core, matter-antimatter reaction can output 10 to the power of 18 watts in a vacuum per technical manuals. This is already beyond Type 1 energy levels on a single ship. The Federation has thousands of ships plus starbases and planets all powered by this technology. Their total energy usage is likely within the lower range of Type 2. However, the key distinction is control. A Type 2 civilization, by definition, has built a megastructure around a star to control its entire output. The Federation hasn't done this. They've found a smarter, more flexible way to achieve similar energy results without building a single colossal project. They've cheated the scale through physics. So, what is the Federation? The Federation is best described as a saying Type 1 plus or transitional Type 1 civilization. They have mastered their planet and their solar system, a key Type 1 milestone. They have a vast interstellar empire encompassing thousands of worlds. Their energy technology, matter-antimatter reaction, fusion, provides them with energy on a scale that rivals a Type 2 civilization, but it is generated from countless decentralized sources, ships, stations, planetary power plants, rather than a single stellar source. Their advancement is better measured by other means: mastery of physics, control over gravity, artificial gravity, inertial damperness, subspace FTL communication, warp travel, and matter-energy conversion, transporters, replicators. Information processing. The existence of sentient AI, data, the Doctor, and holodecks suggests computational power far beyond a standard Type 1. Socio-political organization. Maintaining a stable post-scarcity peaceful, for the most part coalition across light years, is a feat of social engineering arguably more impressive than raw energy output. The Federation's ability to convert matter to energy via antimatter reactors is a technology that effectively allows them to bypass the need for a Dyson sphere. They don't need to harness a star's entire output because they can create a fuel that is, pound for pound, more energy dense. They generate the energy of a star without the star-sized hardware. Therefore, while they may not be a formal Type 2 civilization by the strictest definition of building a stellar megastructure, they have unquestionably achieved a Buck's functional energy parity with one through superior science. This makes them a civilization that has transcended the original intent of the Kardashev scale. Now we moved beyond the classic Kardashev scale to the more speculative and mind-bending Barrow scale, which is exactly the right tool for comparing these two universes. First, a quick primer on the Barrow scale as proposed by astronomer John D. Barrow. It inverts the Kardashev scale. Instead of measuring energy consumption, it measures a civilization's mastery over the fabric of reality itself, progressing from controlling larger environments to controlling smaller and more fundamental structures. Type 1, control its planetary environment. Type 2, control its solar system. Type 3, control its galaxy. Type 4 controls the universe itself. Type Omega controls multiple universes or the multiverse. Type Infinity controls time and space completely existing outside the multiverse. The minus suffix is perfect because it denotes a civilization that approaches this level of control not through its own innate evolution, but through specific, often unexplained technologies or forces. Star Wars, the Type 4 minus civilization. The Star Wars galaxy doesn't control the universe through uniform technology, but through a pervasive universe-spanning metaphysical force. Control over the universe. Type 4. The force isn't just energy, it's a fundamental property of the Star Wars universe. It binds the galaxy together and is present in all living things. This is a form of universe-wide control and influence, accessible to those who can feel it. The minus qualifier. This control is not a technological achievement of the civilization as a whole. It is a mystical energy field that only a tiny fraction of beings, force sensitives, can access and manipulate. The Galactic Empire or the Republic are themselves perhaps Type 3 civilizations controlling a galaxy, but the existence of the Force elevates the setting's potential to Type 4 minus. Their control is esoteric, uneven, and dependent on individual affinity rather than collective scientific understanding. In short, the setting of Star Wars operates on Type 4 rules, a universe governed by a programmable energy field, but its inhabitants are not universally in control of it. Hence, Type 4 minus. This is where my label to use minus Omega comes into the game for Star Trek universe. Star Trek's claim to advancement isn't a universe-wide force, but its repeated encounters with beings who have transcended dimensions and physics altogether. Control over multiverses. Type Omega. The Star Trek universe is filled with beings that have achieved this level. The Q continuum. The Q are the quintessential Omega-level beings. They exist outside of time, can alter the gravitational constant of the universe, create and destroy realities on a whim, and perceive multiple timelines and dimensions simultaneously. They are not just in a universe, they are masters of the universe and likely others. The prophets, wormhole aliens, beings for whom linear time does not exist. They exist in all moments at once, a form of control over the fundamental structure of space-time that is incomprehensible to humans. The Organians, Metrons, and others, various other super beings demonstrate control over reality that borders on the Omega level. The minus qualifier. This is the critical distinction. The Federation itself is not an Omega-level civilization. Humans and most other species are still playing with matter-antimatter reactions, a high Barrow Type 1-2 technological feat. However, their civilization exists within a universe where Omega-level powers are a proven, interactable fact. Furthermore, through technology like the transporter, which has quantum-level resolution, and the spore drive, Discovery, they are beginning to clumsily poke at the edges of multiversal and dimensional travel. Conclusion: using the more nuanced Barrow scale, Star Wars is a Type 4 minus civilization due to the nature of the Force. Star Trek exists in a Type Omega minus framework due to the existence of the Q continuum. This is a far more accurate way to describe their advancement than raw energy output, as it captures the profound qualitative difference in how their universes operate. Comparing technological level, it is evident that Star Trek's universe is more advanced than Star Wars. In Star Wars, light swords seem to be ancient magic based on crystals. If such crystals exist in Star Trek universe, Star Trek would beat Star Wars at every aspect. The industrial capacity of the Empire is gigantic and allow reallocating resources to build Death Star or Star Destroyers. But look at the weapons of a Star Destroyers. A Galaxy-class ship has shields, phaser banks able to fire in any direction, and photon torpedoes. Star Destroyer has no shields, lasers on slow turrets and TIE fighters. Empire has no beaming, slow AT-AT and AT-ST walkers when anti-gravity would do a clearly better job. It is in fact a rewritten Night Saga, and so light swords are fitting well.